Last year, there were more than 900 extreme events all across the globe. They were on every continent. And what really surprised me was when I talked to my friends in Africa, they said, we have always lived with drought. We know how to deal with drought, but the droughts are becoming more intense and more frequent. And not only that, but we are also now having increasing floods. And the combination of droughts and floods are making our ability to develop much harder. We are losing ground because of climate shocks that are already occurring today. There are ecological and economic impacts strewn across the globe. Changing temperature, changing precipitation, and changing sea level are changing the ideal range where everything can live, where forests can flourish, where crops can grow, our own sea level and our coastal communities are being affected. And all of these things in all of these communities are happening simultaneously. We have proof that our ecosystems of the planet are changing. We know that spring is now coming 2 weeks earlier than it used to. We have evidence from 75 botanical gardens all across the globe that measure when the first leaf out or greening happens each spring. We also have independent proof that where crops are growing is shifting in response to climate change. Record heat has been recorded all across the globe. Thousands of records were broken in many, many countries last year. I mentioned the droughts. We're also seeing that the fragile nature of our food systems around the globe are being challenged by these increasing droughts. And pests are also on the move. Pests and invasive species are much commoner due to the warmer, wetter weather, which is allowing them to move into new climates. So whether you're thinking about molds or mosquitoes or ants or ticks or avian flu or West Nile virus, the range of all of these are increasing, many no longer held in check by frost lines. And allergy sufferers, such as myself, are finding that ragweed pollen is 30% more prevalent than it used to be. And poison ivy, common in Asia and the Americas, is much more potent in its urushiol, which is the compound that we're so allergic to. So the thought that a warmer, wetter world would lead to a greener world might have to be rethought, if in fact warmer, wetter, and greener means leading to invasives and weeds and pests. We now have 25,000 data sets of more than a decade in duration that show that plants and animals are on the move in response to a changing climate. They are moving at the rate of 6 meters altitudinally or up mountains per decade, or they are moving at the rate of about 6 kilometers towards the poles. We are also seeing that people are being increasingly affected by the heat. Major wildfires have been increasing on every continent in each of the last 5 decades. Major floods have also been increasing on every continent. I already mentioned to you how Africa is now enduring many, many more floods than it has historically. It's very clear now that past is not prologue, and we need to plan for and manage for a very different world than our ancestors had. All of the impacts I described are things we've already seen. Well, what might the future portend? We might not have seen anything yet. We are on a business as usual path to soar beyond the 2 degrees Celsius that the science community and the negotiating community have called for as a guardrail for safety. In fact, we're headed to a 4 degrees Celsius world unless we turn down the heat. As an ecologist, I am extremely worried about ecosystems. If you think of the pace at which the climate is changing, some 4 to 10 times that observed in our paleo record in the past, we are pushing ecosystems and their parts, the parts that swim, that fly, that crawl, that are wind dispersed, and they can't all keep together. And so we are really disrupting ecosystems at a pace and a magnitude that's not been observed before by humans. There are many places on the planet that we call biodiversity hotspots. Those are places where there's a lot of biodiversity, but it is being lost very quickly. And those are areas where the international community is spending a lot of money to try to preserve those systems. However, if you overlay the climate map and how it will change on these biodiversity hotspots, you see that many of the areas we are concentrating our efforts on are likely to be so different that the species will no longer be able to persist. At 2 degrees C, We expect that some 20 to 30% of the species on the planet are at risk of extinction. At 4 degrees C, we don't really know what will happen, but the incredible heat and the incredible drought will likely lead to the collapse of the Amazon rainforest, so essential for our biodiversity. So many species live there. We are on this path to a 4-degree world, but if we could stop at a 2-degree world, the impacts will be much less, the capacity to adapt will be much more, and the time we can give species to adapt, to move to those new zones that are going to be their ideal ranges in the future, the better we all will be. We absolutely risk irreversible or tipping points if we head to the 4-degree world.